Okay, so first of all, today's learning obviously should be, for the hostages to come back and the Zeich Nishmas passed away and the soldiers to be safe. It's also L'Zeich Nishmas Rav Moshe ben Nachman Halevi, Rav Yaakov ben Shagav Halevi, Sarli Bashul Tzvi, Chan Rav Pesach, Rav Bashur, Rav Avram ben Harav Baruch. Okay, we're up to Daf Chof Gimel Amid Beis, the bottom line. Rav Meir my timer. Just to review what we're talking about, we said in the Mishnah, we're not focusing on how a muad becomes a tam again. We're going to focus more on how a tam becomes a muad. So the first opinion is Rav Yehuda, which is that it has to gore on 3 separate days. And we said yesterday is based on a pasuk, Timol, Mitmol, Shilshaim. Timol is 1, Mitmol is 2, Shilshaim is 3. 3 days, shine. Rava had a different drasha, but the way Taisus explains, it's purely drasha based. It's not halachic. They're all the same. Rashi felt that Rava had a major halachic difference, and that is that it's not 3 and then a muad. It's 2 and then a muad. Okay, fine. But that's Rav Yehuda, that it's days. Rav Meir disagrees. Rav Meir is, I think, what we all thought of, and that is it's not days. It's amount of goring. If it gores 3 times on a Monday, it's a muad. That's Rav Meir Shita. So Rav Meir my time. What's the svar of Rav Meir? So he says the Tanya Rav Meir. Meir said, "Richak nigigaysav chayiv kiriv nigichayzel l'kolshkin." He said, well, if on multiple days it's considered aggressive, kal v'chomer. Meaning, if on 3 separate days it gores once, and that you say, oh, now it's aggressive. Kal v'chomer. If it gores 3 times in one day, that's obviously an aggressive animal. I guess Rav Yehuda could respond to that and say maybe it just had a bad day. I don't think animals have bad days. The point is, Rav Meir is saying it's kal v'chomer. If spread over time is an issue, kal v'chomer in short synopsis, short bursts would definitely be a problem. That's Rav Meir Shita. Now, let me explain before we go weiter. The issue with Rav Meir is the following concept. When a man, there's 2 things. There's a zav and a zava. Okay, a zav is a man who sees 3 seminal emissions not in a healthy way, and he sees it 3 times. If you see it 3 times, even in one day, he's a zav gomer, and he has to bring a carbon, tummy for 7 days. But let's not analyze that. The pasuk says that. But let's go to zava. A zava is a woman who sees blood not during her nida days. What's the halacha? If she sees it over 3 days, she's a zava gemura. But let's say she sees 3 times on one day. There's no difference between 3 times on one day, 1 time on one day. There's no difference. She's not a zav. She's not a zava, right? If a woman, after this, there's 7 days of nida, then there are 11 days of yimei levana. During those days, if she sees blood on a Monday, she's tummy for that day. It doesn't matter if she sees it once. She can see it 50 times. It doesn't matter. But if she sees on a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, oh, she's a zava gemur. What do you see from this? Spread over 3 days, she's tummy gomer. But on one day, not. It's the exact opposite of Rav Meir's svar. Rav Meir's svar is that if spread over time is an issue, kal v'chomer in short spurts. That's not true by a zava. A zava is tameh if she sees over 3 days, but if she sees on one day 3 times, she's not tameh. Why is it not the same? So the Gemara obviously looks at it as the same way you're trying to define whether this animal is aggressive, we're defining this woman as a zava. She's a woman who has a blood problem, whatever that means. And therefore, we cannot define her in one day by 3 spurts. They're understanding it that way, that if the Torah says it has to be over 3 days, that means to define something, it takes 3 days of time to set in that definition. So therefore, by a tam and a muad, it would be the same thing.
Is Zav also 3 separate days?
No, a zav is 3 times even in one day, but that is exeris hakasiv. And we're going to see, it does not apply to zava. So the point is, if your svara is true, it should apply all the time. The Gemara says, Amrulay, they said to Rav Meir, Zava tichich, what about every Zava? Shericha riyusa temeya. If she sees it over 3 days, she's tameh. But kirya riyusa temehira. But if she sees it over 1 day, she's not tameh. So your svara is flawed. Amr lahan, Harei Oimer, he says, no, over there it's different. Why? The pasuk by a zav, where a zav sees it 3 times in one day, he's tameh. The pasuk says, Zois tia tumase b'zayvai. Zois, meaning this concept of 3 in 1 day is tameh for a man, not a woman. So the pasuk is specifically saying this concept applies to a man, not a woman. It's a gzeres hakasiv. Zois tala hakasiv is a zav b'riyas, is a yazav b'yamim. Meaning, Rameir is saying it should. my svara should apply. So why doesn't it apply by a zav? Because by a zav, where it does apply, the pasuk specifically says v'zois. By him it's applying and not by her. So it's a special gzeres hakasav. It's the exception. You're right, it should apply, but the pasuk says by a zav that if he sees 3 times in one day he's tameh, and it says v'zois tiatu masai. V'zois, and only by him and not by her. By her she needs 3 days. This is gzeres hakasav. He's saying it's the exception. Now, so just as a quick point, the way Rav Meir is looking at it is the pasuk says by a man. Again, a zav is tameh if he sees it 3 times in one day. Doesn't matter how many days. 3 times in one day, he's tameh. And the pasuk says v'zois. Dafka, by him it's tameh 3 times in one day, not by her. She needs 3 separate days. That's how he looks at the drush, and therefore it's the exception. The Gemara just wants to know, Memai dahai v'zois l'mutei zav mir Yosef, emel mutei zav miyamim. There's 2 options I've had, just as an aside. There's 2 options to make this drasha. The pasuk says that if a man sees 3 times in one day, he's tameh. Happens to be if he sees 3 times in 3 days, he's also tameh. But if he sees 3 times in one day, he's tameh. And the pasuk is v'zois. This only applies to him, not to something else. So we're saying not to her. That by her, she needs to see it for 3 days. Okay? How do you know that that's the drasha? Maybe it's v'zois, that he's tameh if he sees it 3 times in one day, but he's not tameh if he sees it 3 times in 3 days. Meaning, how do you know that the word v'zois is to exclude a woman? That she's not tameh 3 times in one day. Maybe she is tameh 3 times in one day. And it's v'zois that he's tameh 3 times in one day, and he's not tameh if he sees it 3 times in 3 days. How do you know that's not the drasha? So the Gemara says, Amar Kra, meaning, in other words, if a man sees a zav 3 times in 3 days, how do I know that it's tameh? It will say, well, because it never says it. 3 times in 3 days it says by a woman. 3 times in one day it says by a man. So how do you know? So we said v'zois that by a man it's 3 times in one day, not by a woman. How do you know it's if a man sees 3 times in one day he's tameh, and not if he sees 3 times in 3 days? How do you know that it applies to the woman at all? How do you know this drush is affecting a zav at all? So the answer is Amar Kra v'azav v'sayvai. The reason why I know that if a man sees 3 times in 3 days he's tameh is because it says zav as zavo. The pasuk compares a male zav to a female zava to tell you. Makish zachar l'nekeva. Ma nekeva b'yam, av zachar b'yam. Just like a woman is tameh 3 times in 3 days, so to a man is tameh 3 times in 3 days. Meaning, the pasuk says by a man 3 times in one day he's tameh. How do I know that if he's tameh if he sees 3 times in 3 days? The comparison from male to female. The only one who's out is a woman 3 times in one day. So the Gemara says, "V'likash nekavel zachar." Well, if you're going to make drushes comparing male to female, they're going backwards. Make it that she's tameh if she sees 3 times in one day, just like he's tameh if she threes. The Gemara says, "Ma zachar b'ris, aplikei b'ris." The answer is Hamir Rachman of Azais. Well, we have Azais to exclude that. So Ma Roy. So how do you know? Basically, in other words, you have a drusha comparing male to female and female to male. That would say that a woman is tameh 3 times in one day. But then you have the zois that says that she's not. So which one are you going with? The answer is Mistabra Koi Berias Mamayarias, Koi Berias Mayayamim. It makes more sense. The pasuk says there's 2 options. I'm going to tell you 2 options for a drush, and you'll tell me which one makes more sense. The pasuk says that if a man sees, I don't know, just let people look into each other with each other. Well, don't you have 2 arsos over there? Dead.
One in the corner. I think the Mars over there. Yeah, the left side, second shot. Second from the left.
Recording in progress.
The point is like this: there's 2 options for this drasha cheshbon. Good luck. So the 2 options like this. The pasuk says v'zois. So that means that a man. The pasuk is saying that if a man sees a zav 3 times in one day, he's tameh. So the pasuk is v'zois means that there's one situation which it does not apply. I'll give you 2 options. One, a man is tameh if he sees 3 times in one day, but a woman is not tameh if she sees 3 times in one day. So it's the same, just male to female, but it's the same seeing 3 times in one day. Or a man is tameh if he sees 3 times in one day, but a man is not tameh if he sees 3 times over 3 days. It makes more sense to go with the first approach because at least it's more similar. The first one is saying a male is tameh if he sees 3 times in one day, and a woman is not tameh if he sees 3 times in one day. They're both being contained to one day, as opposed to saying that a male is tameh if he sees 3 times in one day, but he's not tameh if he sees 3 times over 3 days. It makes more sense to go with the first one as opposed to the second one. So the Gemara says, Okay, Tan Rabbanan. Now, if you remember in the Mishnah had there was a machlokes Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda's shita is that it's 3 days to become a muad. Rav Meir's 3 times. There was a second machlokes. How does a muad become a tam again? Rav Yehuda's opinion is that a muad becomes a tam if over 3 days it sees animals and doesn't gore. 3 days to become a tam muad, 3 days to revert back to a tam. Rav Meir's shita was 3 times in 1 day makes it a muad. And how does it become a tam? It becomes a tam if kids poke it and it doesn't attack. So the Gemara says there was actually 3 or 4 shitas more. There are 2 or more shitas, and that is to agree with one and not the other. Meaning, you could take Rav Yehuda's tam to muad definition that it takes 3 days to become a muad, and then how does it revert back to a tam when kids poke it? And you could do the opposite. You could say, like Rav Meir, that it's 3 times in 1 day to become a muad, but how does it become a tam? 3 days of no attack. Like you understand? They're not mutually exclusive. They're not connected necessarily. So the Gemara says, Tan Rabban, Ezu muad. How do you become a muad? Kol she'idu b'shloisha yamim. That's Rav Yehuda. Takes 3 days, gores over 3 days. That's a muad. How does it become a tam again? The tam she'atinoik is mashma ben noigach. Div Rav Yossi. How does it become a tam? So that's Rav Meir's definition. Kids poke it, and it doesn't show aggression. So that's Rav Yossi. So Rav Yossi takes the tam definition of Rav Yehuda, and then the second definition, the aggression definition of Rav Yehuda, but the regression of Rav Meir. And then you have Rav Shimon who says the opposite. Muad kol she'idu b'shloisha pamim. He says no. A tam becomes a muad if it got gored 3 times. But how does it become a tam again? 3 days of no aggression. So, reverse. So how do we paskin? Rav Nachman Rav Adavarav Halach Rav Yehuda b'mud shei Rav Yossi modeba Rav Meir b'tam shei Rav Yossi modeba. We're going to go with Rav Yossi because Rav Yossi takes those 2 shitas. So we're going to follow Rav Yossi's version. So for tam to muad, it's defined by Rav Yehuda. Muad to tam, it's defined by Rav Meir. 3 days. 3 days, and then muad to tam is kids poke it and it doesn't show aggression. That's Rav Yossi's combination, and we're going to follow Rav Yossi's combination lahalacha. So the Gemara says, well, why are you following Rav Yossi's combination? Follow Rav Shimon's combination. Like if you like the combo thing that later Tanoim, pieced together. So Rav Yossi did that, but so did Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon did the exact same thing. We just saw this. The Gemara says, Amalei Rav Rav Nachman. Rav says Rav Nachman. V'lei mamar halach Rav Meir b'muad shei Rav Shimon moedaboy. Lach Rav Yehuda b'tam shei Rav Shimon moedaboy. Why are you following Rav Yossi's chulant? Follow Rav Shimon's chulant. The answer is Amalei Anok Rav Yossi svilei de Rav Yossi nimuka imay. Rav Yossi they would follow in general, especially when he was machlokes against another Tana, because nimuka imay, his reasons are always with him. Rav Yossi was very clear in his shitas, and therefore in general they followed Rav Yossi. So it's not just that he liked the concept of combining shitas; he liked Rav Yossi. It was Rav Yossi's shita that he's following. That by tam to muad he followed Rav Yehuda because they're based on the drushes, and then from muad back to tam he followed Rav Meir. He followed Rav Meir's version because he liked the fact that if kids poke it, that's a very good sign of not being aggressive anymore, as opposed to 3 days of not goring.
Just like their stars.
Yeah. Yeah. Correct. Correct. Now here's the Gemara's kasha. Okay, we're going to focus on from today until basically to the rest of the daf. I'm not doing the Mishnah on Amud Beis, so we'll do that tomorrow. Here's the question. The question is like this. Let's focus on Rav Yehuda's shita. It's a very interesting question. Rav Yehuda's shita is that for a tam to become a muad, you have to have it where it gores over 3 days. Now what that does is twofold. What it does is it shows the animal has an aggressive streak. It just didn't have one bad day. It had 3 bad days. Okay? And number 2 also, it gives the owner time to sort of adjust. You see, according to Rav Meir, the owner doesn't really have a lot of time. According to Rav Meir, if the animal gores 3 times in an hour, the animal's now a mood. And now all of a sudden, the owner has to go from not really guarding well to super guarding in an hour. And the Rav Meir doesn't really care about the owner's mental change. Rav Yehuda though, 3 days, that's a lot of time for the owner to be oh, he gored on Monday? Okay, understood. Tuesday also? Okay, now all of a sudden comes Wednesday. It takes time. The question is, which one is the more significant point? Is it that the animal has proven to be aggressive, or the owner has also been proven to be given time? What's the nafka mina? Let me explain the nafka mina. You say, what's the difference? Who cares? It's 3 days. Both are happening.
Because if you go to a rampage one day, the owner is not.
No, so
He was in town to begin with, and he.
yeah, but it still has to be 3 days.
I understand. No, according to our mayor.
No, we're talking about Rabbi Yehuda specifically.
That's the difference.
No. The question is, in Rabbi Yehuda, is the main point of 3 days to give the animal, to show that the animal's more aggressive, or to give the owner time?
The owner's more crochet though, because he didn't figure it out.
So what's the nafka mina? Who cares? If it's over 3 days, right? The animal goes on Monday, people testify in court Monday, fine. Tuesday, testify in court Tuesday. Wednesday, testify in court Wednesday. Then all of a sudden, by Thursday, the animal's a full-on mood according to Rabbi Yehuda. At that point, both the animal's aggressive and the owner's, at fault. What's the nafka mina between these two? Here's the situation. What if the animal gored on Monday, the owner doesn't know about it? Tuesday, owner doesn't know about it. Wednesday, owner doesn't know about it. Then Thursday, 3 sets of witnesses show up in court. 1 o'clock, set 1, 2 o'clock, set 2, 3 o'clock, set 3. All of a sudden, so the animal has proven to be aggressive over 3 days because there were 3 separate events with 3 separate sets of witnesses. The owner didn't know anything about it, and the owner is finding out about it within an hour. So if the main point is for the animal to be proven aggressive, it has. If the main point, though, is to give the owner time to be like, hey, we're giving you 3 days. The Torah's giving you 3 days because they want you to understand. You got to understand the psyche of your animal. The owner had no time because the owner didn't know about it. He found out. He found out all within an hour. That's the question. So the Gemara says, Shloisha Yom Diktani. When the Torah gives 3 times, 3 days, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is liyudei tura or liyudei gavra? Is the main point is to prove the animal to be aggressive, or to prove the owner to know that he has aggressive animals, that he should be more vigilant? What's the nafka mina? Who cares? My nafka mina. Also, basic beit kitei sadi b'chad yoyma. 3 group of witnesses come to testify in 1 day. What would Rabbi Yehuda say about that? Again, the attacks happened over 3 days. They're not 3 times in 1 day. The attacks happened on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And there are separate witnesses for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but they're all testifying about it on Thursday. The owner didn't know. The owner is finding out when the witnesses come forward. So it's not like, listen, if the attack happened on Monday and the witnesses testified on Monday in front of the owner, fine. And then Tuesday in front of the owner, and then Wednesday in front of the owner, for sure. But what happened is, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the incidents happened when the owner was away. All of a sudden, Thursday, all 3 witnesses show up. All 3 sets of witnesses show up. And all of a sudden, the owner's like, I didn't know. And he's finding out within an hour that his animal is aggressive. If the main point of giving 3 days is for the owner, he's not getting 3 days. So that's the question. The owner could say, I'm only finding out now about this. So what's the halach? So basically, we have to, by the way, to boil it down, the kitzur, can 3 witnesses come forward and testify 1 day that the animal attacked over 3 separate days, and will the animal come and wound based on that? That's the real question, because that's the nafka mina. 3 witnesses come forward on Monday and say, hey, 3 separate times the animal attacked last week. Is the animal a mu'ud? According to the possibility of liyadei tura, yes. Liyadei gavra, no. So let me explain outside, because I think it'll help. I listened to a couple shiurim last night about it. It's not complicated. It's just for some reason they're not explaining it before. Let me explain before. There's a concept called Eidim Zayman. Okay, Eidim Zayman means that if you know that witnesses are coming forward to lie, they come forward and they testify falsely, then they're punished that they dish out whatever they get whatever they're trying to dish out. Now the concept of Eidim Zayman is also, let's say you have, instead of 2 witnesses testifying, let's say 10 witnesses come forward and they're all like, we all saw it. 2 of them are proven to be Eidim Zayman. Nope, it's only a punishment if you have to take down the entire testimony. Now, for that to happen, if you could prove that multiple people are testifying falsely for it to be Eidim Zayman, what you're basically proving is that there was a coerced, there was like a scheme. You understand? It's not a coincidence, right? You have 1 person maybe lies, 2 people are lying. Right? Eidim Zayman by definition means that they scheme together. Because I could lie independently, but for you to also lie and we're lying together, that means that it was a scam. It was a game. The halach is like this. you have 3 different sets of witnesses that testify about 3 different attacks by the animal. So A and B testify about attack on Monday, C and D about Tuesday, and E and F about Wednesday. The halacha is, when you put them all together, the animal is now a mu'ud. What if some of them were Eidim Zomen? The halacha is, they're only considered Eidim Zomen if all 6 are proven to be liars, because normally 2 people testifying is a self-contained concept, but it's not in this case, because to make the animal a mu'ud, right, that's what they're trying to do. They were trying to set the guy up to make it, they were lying to make sure that the animal would be a mu'ud. They were trying to get the guy to pay nezek shalom. So in order for that, so we look at all these 6 people as sort of one giant mass of a testimony. Okay? And if all 6 are proven to be lying, they're all Eidim Zomen. If half, then they're not. That's the halacha. Okay? What's the problem?
If you're only a mu'ud based on the amount of times that the ox gored, whether it's days or times,
Yeah.
and one of those times didn't happen because it's
Correct.
false testament, so then it didn't happen.
Correct.
Why would the shar be considered a mu'ud?
No,
in that same instance?
Eidim Zomen. They're only considered
they're
Eidim
considered-
Zomen if all
so
6 are lying.
Got it.
Now, why are they
So what
considered?
happens then? So in that case, if they're lying about making
No, the animal's a Tom still.
The
Yeah,
animals are
animals, of course.
they just don't get punished like the way it's.
But here's the concept, though. They might be getting chatzin nezek, but they're not going to have to pay nezek shalom until all 6 are proven to be liars.
Okay.
But the guy won't have to pay nezek shalom. You only pay nezek shalom on the 4th time you work.
Correct.
The first 3 are
But by
lying
them,
anyway.
basically, if you have 6 witnesses coming forward, we assume that it was a scheme to get the guy. They want to make sure that this guy pays nezek shalom. So they all lied together, hoping that the next time, correct, they wanted to set it. They want to set the record that this animal's a mu'ud. All 6 have to be lying for it to be an Eidim Zomen. Now here's the question. If you hold that they have to testify, our question is, can they testify on one day? All 3 sets. If you hold liade gavra, liade tura, yes. If liade gavra, they have to testify on 3 separate days to give the owner time. If you hold that they have to testify on 3 separate days, how are they Eidim Zomen? Eidim Zomen means that we believe there's a scheme here. If me and Gavin show up on a Monday and we testify, even if we're proven to be liars, you're supposed to believe that we know Tuesday and Wednesday there's going to be more sets of witnesses. It's impossible to prove. Meaning, it's impossible to prove that it's a scheme. If you hold that we could all be testifying at the same time, that all 6 of us walked into court together, and we all said to each other, hey, you guys are going to lie? Yeah, we're going to lie. Okay, fine, shine. But if you're telling me that it has to be testified on 3 separate days, even if we're all proven to be liars, you cannot prove that I knew on a Sunday. You definitely can't.
It's a scheme.
No, but the point is,
You
you
work
can't.
tomorrow.
It's a very, in Eidim Zomen world, it has to be proven without a shadow of a doubt that we're not just people that are lying, that we're not just people that are ignorant. We did this on purpose. How could you prove that I proved all? But here's the deal. Even if you know, like, the psyche of a person, you come to me and you're like, you lied on Sunday. I'm like, okay, yeah, I did. I don't like the guy. I don't like his face. Okay, you're gonna have to pay nezek shalom. Whoa, what pay nezek shalom? I said he gored once.
Yeah.
They said, yeah, because the next day and the next day other people lied. I'd be like, well, that's their problem. I don't know. How am I supposed to know? You can't prove that I knew they would show up. If they all have to be testifying at the same time, they could testify at the same time. So fine, you could say the cases, as the Gemara is going to prove, the cases, we're all in the court together and we're looking at each other, we're winking, or we walked in hand to hand. Fine, Sean. But if you're telling me that it has to be over 3 separate days, how do you prove it's Eidim Zomen? It could be. But for you to take money from me, you have to prove without a shadow of doubt. My point, the reason why it's very rare is because when you learn Meseches Makis, usually Eidim Zomen are contained to 2 people testifying at the same time. Over here, you need 3 sets over 3 separate days. You can't prove that me lying on Sunday, I knew people would show up on Tuesday. How could you prove that? Unless you wiretap me. I'm saying, how could you prove that? So you can't prove it. So I'm not paying.
It's a RICO charge.
What's the enough? I don't understand enough. Why?
Because you're
But you're not taking nezek shalom from the Eidim
Yeah, you are. Once
No,
they're
because
proven
the
to be
first
liars,
time.
no, once you're proven to be liars, you're proving that we set it up, that they would require the guy nezek shalom, they would have to pay nezek
For
shalom.
future
Okay.
nezek, future
Okay,
hedge.
fine.
He didn't do
Fine,
that.
but when that happens, I'll have to pay nezek shalom.
So you wait till that happens.
Okay,
Future
potentially.
hedging for-
Yeah,
in a
potentially.
month from now,
Fine.
it's-
Whatever, but that's a side point of how they practically, when they take the money and how they take the money. But the point is, Eidim Zoman apply, but Eidim Zoman can't apply if we're lying over separate days. That doesn't make sense. Like, how's that happening? Let's see it inside. It's a long brayso. I just wanted to clarify. Tashema ein hashar nasa muad at sheidu b'fnei bailim b'fnei bezdin. It's a long brayso. The brayso starts off. For Eidim Zoman to apply, you need the owner to be there, and the bezdin has to be present. Okay. Idu boy b'fnei bezdin b'shaloi b'fnei bailim b'shaloi b'fnei bezdin. If they testified not in front of the bezdin or not in front of the owner, in an asamud doesn't work. Fine. That's halach number one. Very simple. Not related. Ha'idu shnayim berishona, b'shnayim b'shniya, v'shnayim b'shlishis. If you have a set of witnesses that testify about the first goring, and then a second second set that testify about the second goring, and a third set that testify about the third goring, harekan sholish ediyos. These are three separate testimonies, meaning they are three separate testimonies in that if, let's say, we don't look at it as one giant unit, meaning, let's say, forget about Eidim Zoman, but let's say you have three sets, and one set is proven to be related to the other ones. We don't say that all of it fell through. That testimony fell apart, right? Like when, if three people testify about a murder, and one of them is related to the other one, the whole thing falls apart. But over here, it's A, B, and C. If A falls apart, you still have B and C. Yeah, the animal's no longer a mu'id, but you still have B and C. We don't say that the whole deck of cards fell. Okay, and the Gemara explains. But for Eidim Zomin, it's one unit. Meaning, for you to get the people to pay Eidim Zomin, they need to all be proven to be liars for one set of witnesses to pay any type of money. And the Gemara explains. Nimtzakas Rishona Zom Emes. Let's say the first set is found to be Zomin. Then Harekan Shtei Idis, so you still have two. So it has, think of it like a hole punch, right? 3 times it's a mu'id, so we had 3, but one of them is proven to be Eidim Zomin. So now it has 2 still. So it'll still pay Chatzi Nezek, but one more time, it's now a mu'id. Okay? Hu pater vehin patur, and the owner is not liable for full Nezek because the animal is still a tam, and the Eidim Zomin are not obligated to pay because they are not the entire, for it to be Eidim Zomin, all of it has to fall apart. Now, they will probably have to pay half damages.
That's
Yeah.
my question.
Yeah.
They're testing
Yeah.
out one instance of one.
Correct.
All
Yeah.
they're trying to get us to do is pay Chatzi Nezek.
Correct.
I understand all 3 sets together will make future cases Nezek Shalim. You're saying that if they're all Eidim Zomin, then future cases, Eidim Zomin will have to pay Nezek Shalim on all future Nezek? By that short?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Hold on 1 second.
Testifying about future cases, testifying about this case. They're saying it has a ripple effect on how you define that.
No,
case
okay,
going
so
forward.
to be fair, there's a lengthy Taisvus. I didn't realize Adam was going to be here today. There's a lengthy Taisvus. No. If you remember yesterday, Taisvus rejected Rashi. Rashi mentioned that according to Rava's interpretation of Rav Yehuda, the first 2 it's mitmol, shilshaim, then it's mu'id. So Rashi said that according to Rava, it's 2 times, then the third time it's mu'id. Taisvus didn't like that. So Rashi, Lishitasai, understands the sugya that they're actually trying to get him to pay Nezek Shalim because they're saying there are 3 times and the third time is Nezek Shalim.
The third set.
No, but if you look at it as a scheme, then all 3 sets are trying to make it a mu'id, and not just a mu'id, they're saying that a mu'id happened. Taisvus doesn't like this because Taisvus does not believe that. So according to Taisvus, Taisvus has a whole different sugya. We're going to go with Rashi. Let's go with Rashi. We'll go with Rashi. Taisvus has a whole different approach because Adam is pointing out a very good point, and that is even if you're making them a mu'id, they're not saying the animal should have to pay now. They're saying the animal will pay in the future. Rashi indicates that they have to pay, if they're all proven to be liars, they have to pay right now. How? Because Rashi Lishitasei holds that the third time is actually a mu'id according to Rava. Taisvus doesn't like that, and Taisvus has a whole different mahalach in the Let's go with Rashi and make it easier. So the point is over here. The first set was proven to be liars, so you still have 2 sets that are honest. So the third set, so the owner still pays Chatzi Nezek, but the third set is not, they don't have to pay Zomin yet because it didn't fall apart yet. Keep going. Nim says Kashniya Zomin, let's say 2 out of 3 are now Eidim Zomin. Again, Hu Pater Vein Beturin. Nim says Kashlisha Zomin, if all 3 sets are liars, Kulan Chayavin. Now they're all Chayav to pay Nezek Shalom. Okay. Valzen Nemar Asisna Kasha Zomin. This is an example of Kasha Zomin. Meaning, that we're saying over here that the 3 sets are all proven that we assume that they didn't just lie, they were scheming together. Now here says the Gemara, if you say that 3 of them can testify, go to the next page. If you say that liyuditura, which means that 3 can be testifying at the same time on the same day. So on Monday, all 3 come in. So then it's very likely that if they all came in on the same day, mistama, it was a scheme. But if you say that they have to testify over 3 separate days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, so limri hanach kamai. So let's say you go to the first set and you're like, hey, you've proven to be liars. They say, yes, we are. You're going to have to pay nezek shalom. They say, whoa, nezek shalom. What do you mean? We just testified that they gored once. Yeah, but the 2 future sets of the next 2 days lied, and we believe it was a scheme. They could say, Anon mi haviyadina, the basa shlosh yom, hanach. How am I supposed to know what's going to happen in 2 days? I'm not a future teller. So I'm not a fortune teller. So no, I'm not paying them. But if you say, so this is a proof that you could testify at the same day, because if they testify at the same day, mistama, it's a scheme. Now here's the question: even if they're testifying at the same day, if one guy comes in at 9 o'clock in the morning, another comes in at 11 o'clock in the morning, another guy at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I mean, right there, it's the same problem. You could say the same thing. How am I supposed to know? So says the Gemara. Ravashi says, I said in front of Kana, let's go with the approach they could testify on the same day, and that works, because liyuditura is the ikr. Limir hanach basroi anon miyadina dechol kai beidina lasu the b'torah kasi anon l'chai begaber palganiz kasin. Same problem. The last guys can say, how am I supposed to know that 11 o'clock this morning guys came in and left? How am I supposed to know? So the answer is that's not such a taina, because if you can testify the same day, there are indicators that you could have which do not apply over 3 separate days. Very simple. 3 answers. The kamaramzi remuze. First of all, the case is that they're while they're testifying, they're winking at each other and. They're on the same day, so they're literally in the courtroom at the same time. And as they testify, they look at the next 2 sets that are walking in, and they're like correct. Says the Gemara, second option. Ravashi Amar Kishabar Tzufin. Ravashi says even without any hand gestures, if they're all coming in one after the other, it's a little too fishy. It's unlikely that it's not a scheme. And the last one is Ravina Amar Makirin Balashar ve'Makilan Esashar. Ravina says a third option is how you know that that it's a scheme is they don't actually testify about which animal. They just say that there's an animal in his. They don't actually know which animal, but they say an animal gored. They say one animal from his herd gored once. They say an animal gored twice, 3 times. They never actually pinpoint which animal. Now, what's the significance of this? Tom pays chatzi nezek, but it pays of the value of the animal itself. There's a cap. If you don't know which animal, you can't collect chatzi nezek. Nezek shalom you can, because nezek shalom is no cap. So it doesn't matter the value of the animal. You all you focus is the value of the damage. If 3 sets of witnesses come forward and they don't actually testify which animal damaged, that's their way of saying we're not trying to get you to pay chatzi nezek, because there's no chatzi nezek if you can't identify the animal. That's their way of saying we know what we're doing. So the Gemara just has a quick question. I get it. That's clearly all of them. If you have a witness that comes forward, like if you go over to a rabbi, if 2 witnesses come to a rabbi and say, we saw one of his John's animals gored, first time. And he says, which animal? They're like, we don't know. You know what the rabbi would say? Don't testify. There's no purpose. Because you're not going to be able to collect the money anyway. Because chatzi nezek only works if you know the value of the animal. If you don't know the animal. But if you were to have 3 people scheme together and say, if we could somehow prove that his herd has a mu'ud in it, and there was a damage, then he'll have to pay. It doesn't matter which animal gored, because you're not focusing on the value of the animal, you're focusing on the value of the damage. Now the Gemara has a quick point.
Can I say that's not good testimony?
What?
Bezdin's not going to say that your testimony needs to include good
Oh,
testimony.
so the Gemara asks this kasha. So what exactly did they say? If they can't identify the animal, then what do they say? The answer is Amri Tura Negacha Isla Bikarecha Ibalan Tur the Kul Bikra. The Bezdin would accept this, and that is if they could somehow prove. They don't say which animal. They say there is an aggressive animal in your herd. You have to now treat them all as mu'uds, meaning guard them all accordingly. That would be conceptually something they would do, but that clearly shows that they're interested in nezek shalom. And then if they all prove to be liars, then the scheme is pretty clear. Now, just to get to the Mishnah, it's very easy. Iboila Abakasha. This we had yesterday, but the Gemara just wants to review it a little bit. Hamashasa kalbe shel chaver b'chaver mahu. What if you have a dog, and I say sick him to someone else? So it's not my dog. So we said yesterday, we had a shayla about it. So I don't have to pay, because it's not my dog. But I go over to the dog, I'm like, go get him. And the animal dog attacks. So I don't have to pay for sure. The question is, do you have to pay? So that's the question. Mishasa vade potter. The insider is definitely potter. It's not my animal. I'm not responsible for not my animal. Bal kelav mai. The question is the owner of the dog responsible? Me amri namatzi amr le ano my avidlech. On the one hand, he could say, "What did I do? I'm not the one who incited my animal. My animal's fine. Why should I be responsible?" Oidilma, amrinale, or perhaps you could say to the owner, "Kivan diadas bikalbech dimishasi le umishtasi loy iboylech lashuye." We could say, if you have an animal in your house that's aggressive enough that could be incited, you should get rid of it. You shouldn't be keeping an animal that could be incited. That's the question. So Amar Rav Zera Tashema, v'tam sheyatinoikis mimashin b've'ena noigach. One of the examples, Rav Meir's definition of a muad becoming a tam, is kids are poking the animal and it doesn't gore. Now let's say it did gore, you'd be responsible to pay. It'd be a mood. But you're not, the kids poking, right? That's the example of, that's the sort of like me inciting another animal. And you see that someone else poking and someone else inciting the animal is enough to be mechayev. The Gemara says no. It never actually says you'd be chayev. It says that if the animal could be incited, it's still a muad. It doesn't say you'll be chayiv. It could be not chayiv if the animal's incited by someone else to attack someone else. So what does it mean it's just a finding. It's saying it's not a docile animal. It's still a muad. It doesn't say you're chayiv. It says if you want to know if it's a tam, if it gets poked and it doesn't attack, it's a tam. If it gets provoked and it attacks, not that it's chayiv, it's a muad. That's it. So the Gemara says, no, Amar Rabbi, Mikatani Nogach Chayv. It never says you'll be responsible if the animal gores. Dilma Hon Nogach Loy have a tam. All it's saying is that if the animal is provoked, it's no longer a tam. It's a muad. It's still a muad. Ubahani Gicha Loy Mechayev, but it's actually not Chayv. Okay, let's go another one. This we had yesterday. Tashma Shisa by Sakel, Shisa by Nachash Potter. If I incite a dog or a snake against someone, I the inciter am Potter. The deduction is my lav. The deduction is that I, the inciter, am potter, but the owner of the animal is chayiv. The Gemara says no. Potter af mishasa. No, both are potter potentially. Okay. Amarava. No, the inciter is potter. Potentially, both are potter. Amarava. Imtim si loimer mishasa kalvish chaver b'chaver chayiv. Let's assume that if I go over to Arla's dog and I incite it against John. Let's assume that the Bala Kelev is chayiv. Let's assume. Shisa hu ba'atzmai potter. What if I incite the dog against myself? Meaning, John goes over to Arla's dog and incites it against himself. Arla's for sure potter. The Bala Kelev is for sure potter. Why? Shisu ba'atzmai potter. My time. Kol hameshanu ba'acher v'shina ba'potter. We had this a couple days ago, and that's the shita of Reish Lakish, and that is keren is unusual. If you do something unusual and the animal responds in an unusual way, the Bala Kelev is potter. So you incite a dog, which is unusual, and then the dog bites, which is unusual. Unusual plus unusual equals potter. How do we know this? The Gemara says, Amarle Rav Papa La Rava, Itmar Meshed Reish Lakish. We actually have a teaching like this, and this is the teaching we had before. Dam Reish Lakish, Shtei Paris B'Rishus Harabim, Achas Revutza V'Achas Mahalechas. You have two cows in Rishus Harabim. One is squatting, which is abnormal behavior, and one's walking. Bata Mahalechas B'Revutza Potter, Revutza Mahalechas Chayev. And the animal that's walking kicks. The animal that's squatting is Potter. Why? Should be Chayev. Kicking is Keren. The answer is the animal is squatting. That's abnormal behavior. My animal is abnormal. So abnormal plus abnormal is potter. So you have two cases. One is I incite an animal against myself. So I do something abnormal. The animal attacks, which is abnormal, potter. And then Reish Lakish said the squatting thing. The Gemara says, Amrle ano bahi chuv mechayvina. Rav actually says like this. I agree with the dog being inciting against myself that you're potter. I don't agree with Reish Lakish's shita. Why? Reish Lakish is basically saying there's a formula. If you do something strange and then an animal does something strange, potter. Rav says I don't agree with that. Because I agree in the first case. You see, in the first case, it's not just strange plus strange. It's I incited the animal and then the animal responded in an aggressive way. But the aggressive abnormality is a direct response to my abnormality. That's potter. In the case of the animal squatting, my animal's squatting on the side. Yeah, it's not a strange thing. My animal's a strange bird. Fine, it's squatting on the side. Your animal walks past and just goes nuts at it. He's like, potter, abnormal time. My abnormality did not bring upon your abnormality, so it should be potter, it should be chayiv. Rabbi says, in that case, I think it's chayiv. Because I don't believe that one abnormal leads to another abnormality. If the abnormality incites the other one, then it's potter. But if one abnormality is I'm doing my thing on my side, and then your animal responds abnormally, well, why should be potter? I rather should be chayiv in that case. All right, we'll stop here.
Go ahead.